In the 19th century, Louisville still had a lot of growing to do before evolving into the major city it is today. But one man who had a great deal to do with that evolution was James Breckinridge Speed. Having fought honorably in the Union ranks during the Civil War, Speed had already demonstrated his courage and competence on the battlefield. But the war between the states was only the first opportunity he had to demonstrate those qualities.
He came back to Louisville as a young veteran from the Civil War and went to work for a cement company, and then in the next 4 or 5 years he put together a number of independent cement operations here in the Louisville area around the Falls of the Ohio, and finally by the end of the 1860s he had put together what became Louisville Cement Company.
For most men, one company as successful as the Louisville Cement Company would have been the high point of a great career. But for J.B. Speed, there were other worlds to conquer.
He was also very early on and served as president of the Louisville Railway Company, which emerged as the dominant and finally the exclusive operators of the streetcars in Louisville. The Louisville Railway Company was another element of business interest that Speed was engaged in.
Always hungry for the next challenge, Speed continued to extend his reach into as many aspects of the business world as possible. And it often seemed as if his name was associated with almost every successful enterprise in Louisville.
He was early on involved with a telephone company. He was involved with woolen mills, several woolen mills. He was a member of the board of directors of banks. He was involved in cement and limestone sales, coal sales. All of these, I guess you would be called subsidiary interest, but nevertheless very important in his wide-ranging business interest.
Such wide-ranging success earned J.B. Speed the kind of financial success most people can only dream of. But what set his apart from so many of his peers was his commitment to sharing his fortune in as many ways as possible.
He was really a remarkable philanthropist. He was very charitable, but he also was modest because almost everything he did of a charitable nature, he did anonymously. One of the few exceptions to this is in 1911, he paid for the bronze statue, commissioned the bronze statue of Abraham Lincoln to be made for the Capitol in Frankfurt.
And even now, almost a century after his death, our city still benefits greatly from Mr. Speed's generosity.
The family clearly chose not to use his wealth for personal aggrandizement, but to use a significant portion of his wealth for enriching the community, both artistically, educationally, and in terms of health services. The institutions that have been created in honoring him, these are memorials to that business success, but they represent also generosity and believing in sowing seeds for the future of our city.
One of the most visible of those institutions is the J.B. Speed Art Museum, which reminds us that Mr. Speed's life was about far more than just business.
He loved painting and sculpture. He collected them very avidly. He traveled to Europe. He traveled to New York. His first wife, Cora Coffin of Cincinnati, I think was an amateur artist herself. And of course his second wife, who he married after Cora passed away, he married Hattie Bishop in 1906. She of course decided that the perfect memorial for him would be an art museum in his honor. And she completed that in 1927. And many of the works of art that we have, the first works of art that came to the museum, were actually collected by J.B. Speed. And I think it's a very fitting tribute.
And the University of Louisville campus is also home to another dynamic institution that owes its existence to the generosity of the Speed estate.
Speed Scientific School is another institution that carries the memory, as it were, of this very, very successful Louisville business person, James Breckinridge Speed.
Entrepreneur, philanthropist, husband, and father. It takes a very special person to balance the demands of all those roles. But James Breckinridge Speed was just the man to do it.
To take care of the multiplicity of interests that he was involved in, boards and president of companies, and getting in on the ground floor of the telephone business, and all of those things clearly indicated a person with wide-ranging interest and curiosity, as well as an unbridled energy.